All right, here we are again with another weekly review and preview. We're 3 weeks into this thing, and for those of you that know us, you may be a little surprised to see us talking football. Christopher and I have do a lot of writing and have been a part of other podcasts that delve into theology and living out our Christian faith, and so maybe it feels like in uh, um I was gonna say incoherent. I don't know if that's the right word to like have a football podcast, but part of this arises from first of all, our mutual appreciation for the sport of football, and then also kind of going through a season of life where we thought it would be fun to do something a little lighter hearted, and also an interest of YouTube channel and content creation, as well as like a mutual frustration for the lack of respect for maybe lesser known or lesser followed sports teams such as our beloved Minnesota Vikings. And maybe you have a sports team, if you're listening to this, that just doesn't feel like people give enough attention to. That's kind of our thing, is like we're trying to keep an eye out for really good stories that people aren't highlighting enough. But unabashedly, we do tend to talk, probably 85% Vikings.
Yeah.
But we're still trying to figure out a name for this. So if we have, at the time of this recording, we have this is our third episode, and none of them are published yet. So if you've happened to have listened to this and you've gotten to this episode and you have a name suggestion and we still haven't gotten a name, go ahead and throw it in the comments and give us your thoughts of what we should call this, or if we should throw in the towel and not dabble in sports again, or do more of it. We are last week we tried a few different things, and we're like, our goal with this is to keep it shorter than an hour. And so we're going to run through we're going to go over one takeaway from week 3, and then we're going to review how we did on our predictions, and we'll end with giving our week 4 predictions, and we'll see how time is going. By then we may dabble with a couple other things in there. But Christopher, what's your takeaway from week 3 as you look at the games? Obviously, there's no way, just so we're clear, we have not watched all the games.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of our general takeaway with what we did see, what we did notice. What are your thoughts?
Oh, my brain is always with the Vikings, and so there's a number of angles I could take at the week, but I think overall of the NFL, my takeaway is that it's a crazy league, and somehow, some way, the Vikings came in dominating. Are dominating.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got a message. My wife is in the air currently, and she just sent me a message, and
Nice.
so I was distracted.
Yeah, understandably.
That's your takeaway? The Vikings are dominating?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know how else to look at it, because the we can pull up receipts, but everyone came into the season saying that the Niners and the Texans were top 3, top 4 at the very least. Especially at week 2, like going into week 2 and then into week 3, that was the conclusion. And the Vikings have dominated both of those teams. Now, obviously, we could get to the end of the year and those two teams, could turn out to not be near what we thought they were into the season, and the Vikings could not be what they seem to be. But I would say, just by looking at the past 3 weeks and what we know of those teams, the Vikings are dominating, at least the NFC. Well, no, the
Yeah,
AFC too, because Texans are AFC.
yeah. I mean, in all fairness, I guess. Well, yeah, they've only played two juggernaut teams. I was gonna say they haven't played the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Steelers. Like they're not on their schedule, so I guess we won't
Yeah.
know. But um, I think my takeaway is going to be a little bit different bent, but 100% agree. And I have to acknowledge that the Vikings have been talked about, and they're entering
Yeah.
people's top three in their power rankings, which even kind of surprised me. With as
Yeah.
little attention as they were given after the Niners win, they're given a lot more attention. But it does surprise me still who just like to me it exposes when you listen to analysts talk. Um, even Albert, I was listening to something from Albert Breer last night. Oh, he made the comment. He said Sam Darnold is the biggest story here,
Mm.
and I was like, even that statement to me tells me you haven't watched these games. Because I don't think any of us Minnesota fans are sitting here thinking like, yes, Sam Darnold's the guy. Like
Oh, yeah.
he's the one. Like none of us are like, oh man, if Sam Darnold keeps it. I think if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl, then you have like, oh, should we hang on to him a little bit
Yeah.
and let McCarthy develop a little bit? But like what Minnesota fans know and believe in is they see the culture and the franchise, frankly, that is being developed
Yeah.
with the leadership of Kwesi and O'Connell, and now Flores. Flores was not there the first year, but like a drastic difference in their defensive performance even last year. And now what they're doing now, like they are statistically second only to the Steelers defensively. I mean,
Hmm.
statistically, they're what stat do you want to look at? They're sacking more than the Steelers are.
Yeah.
I was going more by limit as far as yardage that they limit and points that they've points allowed. Steelers are ahead of them in that, but they're a top three defense, and so that's like yes. So, anyways, this is my takeaway. So I don't belabor it. Rich Eisen on
Yeah.
the overreaction. I think it was their Tuesday edition. Brockman threw out that the Bills are the best team in the NFL. He threw out that Allen is the MVP and the Bills are the best team. I agree with him. I think right now Allen's clearly the MVP. The way he's playing, but I do not. I think I'm like wait what? Like you hardly talk about the Vikings. And who have the Bills played? Same thing with the Steelers. A lot of people are
Yeah.
like, when they do their pretender or contender, they look at the Vikings and they're like, they're pretender, and the Steelers are contenders. Now,
Yeah.
I think some of that is just history, right? The
Right.
Vikings haven't been good. They haven't been a
Right.
legit contender in recent history. And Mike Tomlin has certainly proven himself to be a good coach who's going to have his team contending. Having said that, who have the Steelers actually played against? Like this win over both, and we'll get into this. Both of us predicted a blowout by the Chargers, but it was
Yeah.
actually basically a blowout by the Steelers over the Chargers. So like that's the
Right.
first game. The other one is Detroit. Like people continue to keep Detroit fairly high, but who have they actually played? That's what I'm just kind of baffled over a little bit. Let's just do a rundown. The Bills barely beat the Cardinals in week 1, and then in week 2, they sorry, I'm trying to find it here on the schedule. Where are the
Hmm.
Bills?
Hmm.
Oh, the Bills. We didn't predict
Monday
them
night.
because they had already played. They did they beat
Oh, yeah.
Miami,
Yeah.
which that was the game where Tua went down, and it could be argued, okay, Miami, you know, I don't think Miami is, as much as I like Mike McDaniels, I don't think Miami is as good as people often kind of give them. Their defense has been weak historically, and their offense is kind of hit and miss. Against good defenses, they don't do really well. So I'm just like, plus that was, I know it was the end of the game, but Tua went down in that game. And then this last time they played the Jaguars, who are arguably the worst looking team in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
So sure, the Bills have put up over 30 points in every game. but they haven't played strong defenses yet. Let's look at the Steelers. Who have the Steelers actually played? Well, they beat the Falcons 18-10. Like that's not that impressive or outrageous. They beat the Broncos 13-6. The Broncos weren't good. Maybe they're starting to pick up their offense a little bit, but the Broncos aren't that great. And the most impressive game was this last week where they finally beat the Chargers. They beat the Chargers. They finally played against a team that is
It's
competitive.
supposed
Quite
to be
frankly,
good.
the fact that they only went 13-6, and I don't think Fields had any touchdown passes in the game against the Broncos, like that was rather unimpressive to me.
Yeah.
And then Detroit. Who has Detroit played? Well, they who did they play in week 1? I'm trying to remember. I don't have week 1 up. We were not predicting week 1.
Pull it up. Lions played Rams. That was impressive because Rams were good.
Except they should have blown out the Rams. The Rams came back and almost won it. Like they didn't hold them at bay.
Yeah.
They didn't really dominate it. Week 2, they lost to the Bucks. Now, granted, they did probably play better than the Bucks. At least that's what I was hearing. I didn't watch any highlights or anything, but Goff hasn't necessarily looked, and this is what I'm hearing from people, that he hasn't looked that outstanding. And then the Lions beat the Cardinals this last week, which was what do we have on that score? 20-13. Like, and the Cardinals had I caught the tail end of it. Like they could have definitely put some points on there. Again, I just don't take the Cardinals that terribly seriously. But anyways, here's my hot take. Like you said, Minnesota, we had the Vikings, a 10-win team or 9-win team, maybe even 10-win team, without winning against the Niners and the Texans. And they haven't just beat them, they've dominated them. They manhandled them. It's sort of amusing watching people come up with excuses for why not to take them seriously. Like, oh, well, the 49ers didn't have McCaffrey. The Texans didn't have Joe Mixon. Why don't we ever hear people talk about how the Vikings didn't have TJ Hawkinson? They didn't have Jordan Addison. They didn't even have Dallas Turner in this last game. And like the Vikings are playing down and they're manhandling people. They're in control. They've put up over 23 points in every game so far. So I think we've seen enough to take it seriously. They're the best coach team in the NFL. They have a top 5 defense already. My prediction was that they would by the end of the year, that we'd be like, oh, this is a top 5 defense. They have a top 3 defense. I think they'll stay a top 5, if not be the best. And then the other thing is Darnold's been really good. Like, give the man his flowers. Like, maybe we didn't actually know who he was. Anyways, that's my hot take. That kind of rambled on a little longer, but I agree with you. That is
your hot take is that people aren't.
Sorry, that's my overview.
Vikings? Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
My takeaway. Yeah. I guess it's a hot take. I don't know if it's a hot take. It's just kind of the way it is. But
yeah. No, you're very right. I think. There's just some things that really annoy me, and probably it's because people don't pay attention to like the daily grind of, like, national media don't pay attention to the daily grind of most teams, let alone a team like the NFL. I imagine, like, something that always kind of annoys me is when people talk about, like, in some ways it's true, in some ways it's not. But when people talk about, like, oh, this franchise always has good defense, like Steelers always play Steeler ball, that makes sense because they've had like 3 coaches the last 50 years. But when someone refers to the Vikings and they're like, "Oh, the Vikings are always such and such," just tells me you haven't paid any attention to the Vikings in the last 5 years because
Yeah.
almost no, like there's like three players maybe who are still from the Zimmer era, and
Who
and
other than Smith? Who?
Smith, Jefferson, um,
Oh yeah, he would have been.
and some of the O line people. Like I think Darisaw was drafted by them.
Harris Phillips. Maybe.
Harrison Phillips came during that time, and maybe I think Brian O'Neill. Um, so
Ingram
like
wasn't, or no, Ingram was
I
22 draft, wasn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
I know Brian O'Neill played with Diggs, so like there's like three people from the Diggs era, and then from the Zimmer Spielman era, there's maybe like four or five. But like
Oh yeah.
that's like on what is a roster?
53 or
53, yeah. Um,
is that
out of
active?
I think that's, yeah, that's not including like the practice squad or anything like that, which
Yeah.
you can like elevate up to. But you know this is a fundamentally in every way a different team. Like there's maybe a couple of coaches that stayed on, and the wide receiver coach, all the wide receivers went to O'Connell and asked him to keep the wide receiver coach.
Are you serious? I never knew that.
Yeah, yeah, because they liked
Interesting.
him so much. At the time it was like Thielen, KJ Osborne, and Jefferson, and
Hmm.
then whoever else. Um, so it just annoys me that, like, I think people look at the logo of the Vikings, like, quite literally. I think they think of the Vikings, and all they think of is like who they have been, and they don't understand the ins and outs of, like, number one, like it's a whole new regime, and like they're building towards something, and I think that maybe that just shows how stand out, you know Tracy Adolfo Menso and Kevin O'Connell, like how standout their administration is, because they actually came in with a plan versus like, let's rebuild as quick as possible and like be Super Bowl contenders. Um,
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone comes in with a plan, but like I don't think people realize like there was always going to be a young or new quarterback. You know, the Vikings roster was a mess. It was in cap, what people refer to as cap hell. Um. Anyways, yeah, we ranted enough about this, but like,
Yeah.
I I I think there's even the fact that some people are like, oh no, JJ. We've talked about this, I guess, even in previous iterations, but when JJ got injured, it was like I it was a bummer, and I wanted to see if maybe eventually he could come in, and I certainly wasn't expecting Sam Darnold to play this well, and so I thought
Yeah.
maybe there was a chance that he would eventually come in. But like we knew, anyone who was following the team knew that like their plan, their desire was, or maybe I should say their expectation was, that he would sit out the first year unless he was just like CJ Stroud, basically. Like he would have to be incredible. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, just annoys me when people are like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
It exposes how, 'cause probably sort of like I have to eat some words about the Jets with all due respect. Like the Jets are
so
looking a lot better than and it exposes like some of my
yeah,
talking about the Jets probably exposes to a Jets fan like you haven't been paying attention to this team, have you? Um,
yeah." But
but
also,
to
they were terrible last year without Rodgers. Like they fell apart, whereas the
yeah,
Vikings
the
didn't.
Jets have been bad. The Vikings have been,
Yeah.
yeah. So just for some context, if you're just joining us for the first time, you happen to see this and you haven't watched the other two where we explain some of this. Um, we are Vikings fans, so we're obviously like we want to highlight the Vikings because we think there's some really good stuff going on, and the Vikings have been
Yeah.
going on in the O'Connell era that people just don't talk about. Like people didn't take they went 13-4 2 years ago, and people didn't take them seriously because they had a negative point differential. It's kind of funny if you go on right now and look at the like I think point differential matters. That indicates you don't have a good defense or a good
Right.
offense. But obviously you can win games with a negative point differential. If you go on right now, there's some like Houston has a horrible point differential at the moment, and yet there's
Yeah,
like everybody sees them as a contending team,
this
and
that's what annoyed me in 2022 when people went on about the Vikings point differential. We were blown out 40-3 by the Cowboys. Of course we're going to have a negative point differential.
yeah. And also blown out like the so last year it was a pretty close game with the Eagles and actually uh came down to a turnover, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was,
But they were blown out by the Eagles too that year. There were two blowouts, and
yeah,
but the other thing is the Vikings weren't like here's the point I was trying to make.
yeah,
The Vikings had a horrible defense that year. It was soft. It was frustrating. Ed Donatel was fired
yeah,
very soon after the season ended. But we saw stuff from the offense, and particularly because we as Vikings fans, the majority of Vikings fans were ready to move on from Kirk Cousins.
yeah,
And then we see Kevin O'Connell like unlock some stuff. Like he's taking riskier passes and he's trusting his receivers more. And they're like having phenomenal games and coming from behind and actually winning. Cousins was notorious for putting up gaudy stats when down.
yeah,
And he has to, but he could never get over that hump and actually pull off a come from behind win until O'Connell showed up on the scene, and
yeah,
all of a sudden, like the scheming is different. So we expect, okay, you got to fix the defense. Well, sure enough, they hire Brian Flores and go into 22 or 23, and they have a solid defense, top 10 defense, best in the league against the rush. But Kirk Cousins gets injured, goes down. And so then Kevin O'Connell is trying to draw up plays with backup quarterbacks for the rest of the year. But here's some statistics. So, anyways, what I want to get to some statistics just to point
yeah,
like just how good this coaching staff is. But we were not like Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl.
right,
We thought no, there's a good chance they could make it to the playoffs because of their defense. Their defense is so strong. We weren't like we were very much. I don't know what we'll get from Sam Darnold, but I think Kevin O'Connell will be able to do something good with him. We knew that they were planning to have a transition year. It was
yeah,
surprising the two games JJ did play in, like he looked really good and ready. And so then it was like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to see him throughout the year. But we weren't expecting much for the season. We did think the NFC North is probably the strongest division in football, but we did not expect what we are seeing from Sam Darnold and even the fact that they won against the Niners and the Texans. But we were pretty sure that at some point we would see this type of play develop just because of being what was being built. The statistics, Kirk Cousins with all other head coaches is 59-61. And obviously some people don't think a win-loss record is a that important of a stat for
yeah,
quarterbacks, but I mean it is what it is. With Kevin O'Connell, he's 18-8. So like Kevin O'Connell was able to do something with him that all other head coaches weren't able to do. Joshua Dobbs, who came in and everybody's like wowed by what Josh Dobbs can do. He was 1-9 with all other head coaches throughout his league. Like there's a reason he's a backup, a journeyman
yeah,
quarterback. He went 2-2 with Kevin O'Connell. And he had played 500 ball. And now you have Sam Darnold, who's undefeated with Kevin O'Connell. And not just undefeated, but he leads the league in touchdown passes. He
yeah.
he's top 3 in QBR, I believe. And he's up there in passing yards as well. But I just think, yeah, it's just obviously people don't watch like I have enough friends who are big Eagles fans, so I kind of like compare them to the Eagles. And if you go back to a year ago from today, the Vikings have a better record from their. If you go back through week 4 of last year, the Vikings have a
Mm-hmm.
better record than the Eagles do. And so if people think the Eagles are like, oh, this put together, they got a defensive
Yeah.
coordinator now, let's Super Bowl contender here. Well, the Vikings should have similar respect as
Yeah.
well because we know how the Eagles can fall apart. But anyways,
The Philadelphians at least are very down about the Eagles.
they are.
So yeah, I mean they're very quick to feel kind of pessimistic
Yeah.
about the team, and so
Maybe we'll get into this, but I do think the Eagles team is really good. They should be playing better than they are.
yeah,
I don't think it's that they're not a good team, but anyway, shall we review
let's do it.
our picks from last week? I continue to head in a losing trend. Actually, I played 500 ball this past week, but
You played
um,
better.
so heading into the week, you were 8-7, and I was 7-8. The reason was last week we recorded post the Thursday night game, or I'm sorry, not
The week before, yeah.
the week before we recorded. So we only had 15 games that we made picks for. So week 3 we had the Jets versus Patriots. Both of us picked the Jets. You know what? I think I shared my screen
Oh yeah.
before. That would be better for our viewers, even though
I feel bad. It seems like Bill Belichick left the Patriots just an absolute mess. Like I hate for
yeah.
Gerard Mayo to be judged by how they do this year because they're gonna do really terribly.
Do you think people are
I doubt it. At
like?
least not this year.
Yeah, I've actually been generally impressed with what they have done. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, no,
I
I
can't
mean this
remember.
Jets game was a
They did go
pretty
toe to toe with
solid
the
blowout, but
Seahawks.
yeah. Browns versus Giants. We chose the Browns, and surprisingly, the Giants won.
Yeah,
Which,
that was
just for more Vikings fodder, everybody was down on Daniel Jones after played the Vikings, and we were too. Like we didn't. Daniel Jones doesn't seem that good, but the Vikings have made Brock Purdy and C.J. Stroud look very similar, and Daniel Jones hasn't played too bad
yeah,
since. So. Bears versus Colts. We had the Colts winning, and this is something that just almost triggers me a little bit, especially
Bears.
with well, no, like the hype that's put in, especially with what's happening with Sam Darnold, what we saw with Baker Mayfield, even Geno Smith. There's so much hype. Nick Wright has the Bears going last in the division to going to the Super Bowl. Like, what in the world? It
Yeah,
ought to be a given. If you have a rookie QB, you're not going to be that good. That doesn't mean he's not a great QB and that you're not going to be Super Bowl contenders in the near future, but give the first year some grace.
yeah,
Um, so I was not surprised to see the Colts win that one. Vikings versus the Texans. We chose the Vikings, and
nice work, nice
it
work,
was
guys.
close. I thought it would be like a 2017 or 24-21, but it was a beautiful 34-7.
Yeah,
It was interesting. I thought the Saints would handle the Eagles easily, but then I remembered the Saints actually are blowing people out because Alvin Kamara is running again,
yeah,
and the Eagles actually have a pretty decent rush defense.
yeah,
So they played good enough to pick up the win. What was it? 15-12 or 17-12 or something along that line.
yeah. I'm looking.
The Chargers week Eagles 15-12. Yeah, Eagles won 15-12. We thought the Chargers might blow out the Steelers, and we were quite wrong on that. It was a 20-10 win. Maybe that's not called a blowout, but the Steelers handled that easily. And Justin Fields looked pretty like their first two
Yeah.
wins were basically defensive wins, but this was a game where Justin Fields looked all right. The Broncos manhandled the Buccaneers. Were you surprised by this? I mean, I was.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
everybody.
Yeah, that was definitely surprising.
26-7, won by 19 points. The Packers beat the Titans. We both had that. I thought about picking the Titans, but yeah, the Titans do not look good right now. Will Levis
Yeah, I don't know.
is not looking good. The Panthers, somebody, if yeah, I was gonna say Darnold. What's his name? Dalton
Andy
kind
Dalton.
of came on and shocked the world to be the
Yeah.
first QB with 300 plus yards,
This year.
3 touchdowns, and no interceptions.
Hey, Ash, I need to go
The
check on the baby real fast.
Sure, I'm gonna continue to go through these if that's good.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Dolphins and Seahawks. The Seahawks beat the Dolphins, which I think, yeah, the Dolphins are going to have to, well, especially if Tua is out longer than 4 weeks, they're going to have to find a different QB because they're just not at all competitive.
Dolphins, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without, I mean, with who do they have? Thompson and Boyle as their backup QBs.
Yeah. Was it like
The
Skylar Thompson or something like that?
Yeah. The Lions beat the Cardinals, which that was a pick you made. I should just ride your curtail. I chose the Cardinals because I thought they could pull it off, and I wanted to, I need to get a win above you so that we could tie. But it worked against me. I was wrong. You were right. Ravens beat the Cowboys. The final score looks close, but
Yeah.
goodness, that game was not anything close.
19 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Well, it was like, what was it, 24-3 after the first half? I forget. It was
21-6, it looks like.
Oh, okay. Not quite as bad as
And
I
then,
wanted it.
And then, yeah, that was all the points they scored until the fourth quarter for the Cowboys.
I feel bad for Cowboys fans because I don't like. I feel like the Cowboys are a version of the Minnesota Twins where you had a solid playoff run and the Minnesota Twins finally break their curse, and within weeks of the season ending, the owner comes out with they're cutting payroll, like they're not gonna, and so it just like takes the air out of. And I think the way Jerry Jones handled the offseason with the Cowboys, it's been hard for Cowboys fans to get that excited, or even the team maybe. Sort of seems like it, but.
Yeah, just when you take a sort of lackadaisical approach to it as an owner, I imagine that doesn't bring any inspiration for the team. Like that's part of, again, back to the Vikings, but like some of these crappy teams, I think, are just they're playing out of inspiration rather than out of like duty or desperation or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they definitely, they're kind of like the Bengals, perhaps. Like they have guys in the room that can play at an elite level, but players want to see that the owners take it seriously. They're building something around, and to bring it back to the Vikings, like that's the thing that's really different right now. Is it genuinely feels like like the ownership has given the front office and their coaches to go out and put the best product on the field, and that they're doing it. You have GMs who are not necessarily former players. They're just good businessmen listening. They
Yeah,
get the right people to be coaches, and then they listen to them. And yeah, 49ers versus Rams. This was, I did not
just
watch.
super surprising.
Yeah, I just saw like the score. The Niners were way up, and then the Rams come back, and then I saw a breakdown of Stafford's play, particularly some of the towards the very end, like a part of the comeback. And I don't think
Mm-hmm.
Stafford gets enough love as a
Mm-hmm.
QB. Like he is one of the best QBs. Like obviously Josh Allen, I think has been playing is a front runner MVP through weeks 3. But just as far as like knowing how, so the final drive, the game winning drive, they're at home in SoFi Stadium, and he had to go to silent count with his teams. And not only that, their team is so injured. The O line that he's doing a silent
Yeah,
count with has probably never run these drills with him. A number of the guys, and just his ability to direct his offense in that commotion and
yeah,
his poise, and then Stafford's always been known for his ability to direct defenses with his eyes and then
yeah. No
throw in a
look
different
passes and
direction.
stuff.
And
Yeah,
yeah, he just played phenomenally. Brock Purdy played unbelievably in that game. The 49ers are injured there, but yeah, I mean it sounded like a fun game. I did not watch it. I watched some highlights and stuff, but yeah, it was definitely surprising to see the Rams pull off the win.
do you see Christian McCaffrey and Kyle Shanahan flew to Germany to see a specialist about his tendonitis and his Achilles?
Oh, really? I did not see that.
Yeah, it's
Is
not
that
looking
the
good
same?
for McCaffrey.
Yeah. Is that the same thing that had him out? What was it? 2 years or 3 years ago with the Panthers?
I'm unsure. It might be. I don't remember. I was thinking. I mean, he's had a number of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the Chiefs versus Falcons. We chose the Chiefs. They won. The Bills versus Jaguars. The Bills blew out the Jaguars.
Excuse me.
The Chiefs, I don't think the NFL is scripted. I think it's kind of lazy analyzing to be like, oh, the only reason the Chiefs win is because of the refs. But goodness gracious, that was it, the refs aren't helping their case when you don't call pass interference on who was it? Cook?
Yeah,
Is that Cooks
I
against
think it's fixed.
Pitts in the end zone? Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
majorly blown call. And then Bengals Commanders. What are you more?
wild game.
Yeah, wild game. Are you surprised the Bengals lost, or is it like, oh, Jaden Daniels is the most pro-ready
Um,
rookie?
I think I think I'm more. I'm not really surprised by either one. I think I was surprised that they played so well, the Commanders. I think I'm surprised and yet not surprised at just how terribly like the Bengals organization just seems to be in a little bit of disarray. And they could pull it
Yeah,
all together and like make a late season run for sure, but they just seem to be a little bit of a mess. And like the fact that like Jamar Chase is like they don't seem to be on the same page. And obviously I can compare it to the Vikings and Jefferson, but very, very similar situation going on. And with a guy like Joe Burrow, you would think that they would have things under wraps a lot more, but they seem to kind of be in disarray. So I think I'm maybe surprised just how terribly the Bengals are playing. Um,
yeah,
I think there were I had a gut feeling that Caleb Williams wasn't going to be as ready as everyone was hyping him up to be. Whereas Jaden Daniels, like, he came from LSU, um, same system. I mean, different coach, but like same program that Burrow came from, and Burrow was great right out of the gate. They also have like this new technology. It's the same technology JJ McCarthy is using right now. Um,
Get the right
where,
Mick.
yeah, McCaffrey, McCarthy. There's also McCaffrey on the Commanders.
Are
But
they
no,
related?
no. I think it's spelled differently for one thing,
Oh, okay.
and also I think I'm yeah. Um,
Sorry, I derailed you.
J no, you're front. Jaden Daniels used they LSU has kind of pioneered the use of this kind of VR technology where you can run through the plays again virtually, like in a headset, and they have like a whole setup and stuff. So like there was a lot of I think legitimate hype around Jaden Daniels, and I don't know that he was like I was there was a part of me that was kind of hoping the Vikings could maybe make a play for him, but I just assumed he wasn't, so he wasn't super high on my list for the Vikings, just because it seemed pretty certain it was going to be Williams, Daniels, and then
Yeah.
the third was kind of a wild card.
Yeah. No, I really like Daniels. You were you guys out? You guys were out here right over the
The
draft.
draft,
As
yeah,
a and we talked. Yeah, I was wishing and hoping we'd hear of a trade up and they'd go get Daniels. So I'm not surprised to see Daniels go off like that. At the same time, I don't really regret getting McCarthy. Like
yeah,
I think
yeah,
obviously McCarthy got injured, but his build, like watching him in preseason, he's got an agility that's reminiscent. Maybe this is too far fetched. I can say reminiscent of Josh Allen. Like he's a big
yeah,
guy who's agile,
yeah,
and Daniels is definitely smaller, and so it'll be interesting to see what a career um,
right,
in the long run looks like. But
yeah,
obviously, he's hurt from a no contact injury. It seems like so. Hopefully, that doesn't.
McCarthy, yeah,
Yeah. Anyways, I we do well at rambling, especially when we're going off about our Vikings.
Vikings.
So there's plenty
Yeah,
of
we spent
things,
20 minutes on them.
plenty of things that stuff we had that we could discuss, and maybe we'll discuss futures. Like I think this is the year that coaching we're going to see like differentiation between coaches, like prove themselves
Yeah,
or don't prove themselves. But I don't know if we'll really go into that
yeah.
today. Unless we want to, as we're going through our picks for. Let me stop sharing as we make picks for. I should create a list so that we can share that and have people watch because it's probably interesting to watch things more than just our lovely
Our
faces.
faces.
Get some formatting. The more we actually do this thing and get serious about it, the more professional we can get in our
Yeah.
production here. So tomorrow night, Cowboys versus Giants. What's your pick?
I'm gonna I'm gonna maybe go out on a limb here and say the Giants.
Shoot. Now I have to. You've been right so far and everything. I have to.
You have to decide. I haven't been
Do I
right in everything.
decide?
I'm nearly I'm only
Well,
two games ahead of you.
where we split ways, you've been right. Let's put it that way. We've been collectively wrong together, but where
Sure.
we split ways. um, man, I might come back. Let me look at the rest of the
Come
schedule
back to it.
here. Is there?
This is a good chance of me being just totally wrong about this.
I think I'm gonna go with the Cowboys, but I'll confirm that before we're done with these. Bengals at Panthers.
Bengals. I mean, I mean, I just don't think the Bengals go 0 and 4.
Yeah. Man, I was gonna say Panthers, they're home and Dalton's looking beautiful, but
Yeah,
I think you're right. Like Bengals are better than they've been playing.
yeah,
It's just I think it's something in the locker room and just the
yeah,
environment there is yeah. And Burrow actually, I mean, he put up 33 points. That's pretty good game.
yeah.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna come back. Well, I'll give my final picks once we go through all of these here. Saints at Falcons. This is a big divisional game to watch.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Ooh, I just don't have a good feeling about the Falcons. Like, I just don't know where. What I mean is, I just don't have a read on them.
Yeah, the question is are because the Eagles and the Chiefs have not looked themselves. Like
Right.
they have not looked that good. Is that true? And the Falcons aren't like we weren't super high on the Falcons
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year. And maybe the Falcons aren't actually that good and the Eagles and Chiefs just aren't that good either. Or are the Falcons better than we think?
Yeah.
And they're because they beat the Eagles, they were competitive with the Chiefs. Yeah.
Um, my gut is that the Falcons might be better than I think, but I also think this kind of the same about the Saints, and so I'm gonna go with the Saints
I'm
just
choosing
based off of their
Falcons.
play. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna go
Um,
with Falcons though. Choose that. They're close enough. I mean they're close enough in ability. I'm gonna go with the home team, but I could
sure.
be wrong. Yeah. Jaguars Texans.
Texans.
Did you know? And I know we're 3 games in, but did you
Yeah.
know a team that has played the Vikings has had like when teams play the Vikings, they lose the following week.
No, really? That's
They
kind of.
Albert
Go
Breer
ahead.
was pointing that out. He's like so the beating the Vikings beating the Niners. We were
Yeah.
looking so how can they play against the Texans because historically the Niners beat up
Right.
on teams,
Yeah.
but that narrative is kind of flipping for the Vikings now. But I do
Well,
think the Texans are significantly better than the Jaguars.
yeah. The whole I don't know if you followed, well, I think you followed some of the story about Kevin O'Connell's dark side. Um
Yeah.
that was something I guess that has been a point of emphasis this year particularly, and maybe kind of the middle of last year, was just he a flip switched in him, and he's really wanted the Vikings to be physical. Like, even the way they did training camp this year was different than previous years,
Did
so
you?
that they would be physically ready.
Yeah. I'm not. I can't remember if this was Purple Daily or some one of the Score North podcasts, or if it was the Albert Breer update that I was watching. But he and Flores, O'Connell and Flores, sat down at the end of last year and looked at the injuries that they had and everything, and basically came up with a plan of. I think I kind of I was doing I had it in one ear pod and doing cleaning up the house in the other, but um, the gist of it was that they need training camp to be all about toughness. Like they
Yeah,
need to because of the injuries that they received last year they need to come in ready to be equal or above teams like the Niners in toughness or Eagle. I mean,
that's
Eagles are
interesting.
historically tough as well.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. That's really interesting. See,
I
all
lost
games come
my
back to the Vikings.
yeah. Sorry. We're probably frustrating somebody like
Nah.
the Colts. The Colts are a team that I kind of keep my eye on. Like they might kind of fly under the radar. Of
Yeah, I really like Anthony Richardson. He's not playing very well, but
yeah, and I think Shane Steichen is one of those coaches who um either
yeah,
by the end of the year will be like he's a really good coach, or his team may not quite play to the caliber. Like I think he's a
yeah,
good coach, is what
yeah,
I'm trying to say.
yeah,
Um, so we both picked the Texans, or are you
yeah.
picking the Jaguars?
No, I picked the Texans.
You want to? Why don't you pick the Jaguars?
No, no,
Watch the Jaguars win then.
they probably will.
Okay. Um, see, this is what it's like to be a Minnesota sports fan. Is like you
Yeah,
have PTSD about any hope or
yeah.
expectation. Um, Broncos at Jets.
This is the interesting game. There's a lot of animosity between the two teams. But I definitely think the Jets win.
I go with you. I think the Jets as well. So here's the one: Vikings at Packers. What are you gonna do? I told you off air what I'm gonna do.
It's gonna be a really interesting game.
Is Love playing for sure? Has that been?
No, I don't think
It's
it's been
not.
confirmed.
Yeah, it'll probably come out tomorrow or
Um,
something.
Honestly, I think if Love plays, I think the Vikings win. Um,
Really?
yeah, because
Why?
partly that whole physicalness. And like if he's playing reserve, if the quarterback is playing reserve
That's
at all
true.
because of injury, I just don't think they have a chance against this Vikings defense. Which is why I don't think they should play Love because I don't I don't
I
see
had that.
why you would risk um
I had that
further
thought
injury.
yesterday, but I thought maybe it was an intrusive thought.
What thought?
I was like, if Love plays, that may actually be better for the Vikings.
Yeah,
Was kind of the thought that.
yeah. Um, I think the Vikings win.
I think the Vikings can easily win, but I'm just playing the logical game. Like they're not going to win
Sure.
every game,
Right.
and their home field advantage is
It's
massive
true.
right now.
True.
And so I think they're going to win. Like I guess I've been going into the season, I've been thinking they're going to split against divisional rivals, very likely. And so I'm going to go with the Packers. I think that's what I said I was going to do. I think the Packers win their home game, and the Vikings win when the
Are
Packers
we
are in Minnesota.
are we doing hot takes later or should I do it now?
Do a hot take now. Sure.
I think the Vikings sweep the North.
That is a hot take.
It's a very hot
Hold
take.
it. Do you think?
It could immediately disappear this weekend, but this if they lose, this is the one.
Yeah,
Also, Detroit
I'm
also
not
I
as.
think I think they sweep the Bear and I think they sweep at home.
So
So like
your hot takes are mounting because before we started recording, you said I think they sweep Detroit, and now you're like they're going to sweep the North.
what no, I thought through it because I was like I think they're gonna win all of their home division games.
Yeah,
And I feel like they can very
I
easily sweep
I
Detroit.
agree.
I don't see them losing to the Bears. And so
Yeah,
if they
same here.
win this weekend, I think they sweep the North. Maybe I should caveat it. Maybe I should say if they win this weekend, I think they sweep the North.
My one concern, and Goff is not near as agile as Purdy and Stroud, but there's a few things we have yet to see with the Vikings yet. First of all, how do they play from behind? Like they've
Yeah,
not been
it's
behind at
true.
all.
It's true.
That's
It's like
a
two
rarity.
minutes or
Like
something. Yeah.
we don't know what it's like to have that narrative as Vikings fans.
Yeah.
Oh, they blow. That's the narrative about the Bills in times past is they either blow people out or they lose. Um, so what do they do in close games? The second thing is how do they bounce back after a loss? Like we don't
Yeah,
know. The other thing that I think we have yet to see is they've been able to fluster really good QBs, but they're
yeah,
young QBs. And so Goff is going to bring a maturity and an
that's true.
experience, but then he's not near as athletic as Purdy and
Yeah,
Stroud. So yeah, no, I mean that's a hot take. I'd love to see it. And I think like
if
honestly, when I've seen what they did against the Niners and the Texans, and I realize people listening to this, if they're not, if they don't follow the Vikings and stuff, this is just going to sound like Vikings hype, and maybe they lose to the Packers and the Jets, and everybody's laughing at us, whatever. But like
yeah,
these weren't fluke wins.
right,
These were solid, competitive.
yeah,
Like they outplayed the opposing teams the all four quarters, and
yeah,
and I really believe those were the two hardest games on their schedule. So why can't they
yeah,
play to that caliber all
yeah.
year long? Yeah. No, that'll be let's see how it pans out.
It certainly is Vikings hype for me to say that because it's almost impossible for any team to sweep their division. But
Yeah.
um, records typically go out the window in division games, and so
Well, you
I mean,
have the Chiefs who have been phenomenally better
right,
than everybody else in their division. They split against their division all the time. Like
yeah.
Chargers have a random like really good game against
Or the Broncos
the
last year, yeah,
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It'll
yeah.
be interesting. I to me that feels like a step too far. Like I can talk to all my doubting friends and be like, no, like this is a legit. You haven't watched the defense, have you? But to say they're going to sweep the North, I'm like
If they win this
Christopher
week,
takes that hot take.
if they win
I
this week,
don't.
I'm gonna tell everybody.
Yeah, do that. We'll have to for sure get this episode published so that it's live.
Yeah.
I don't feel like my hot take is hot anymore. Like I was going
Did
into
I
week
did
one
I
was
cool it down?
no. I my hot take was that the Vikings have a top five defense.
Oh
But it's
yeah,
like, well, that's obvious now. Like everybody's talking about that,
yeah,
or at least everybody who watches the games.
yeah.
Um. Anyways, let's. Where are we at here?
Next game, we just did the
Steelers at
Vikings.
Colt.
Did you predict? You predicted Packers?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm
Yeah.
staying with the Packers.
Um, I think the Steelers. Steelers are playing better than you would think. I think they're well coached. They've got a good defense, and I think Justin Fields isn't as bad as the Bears made him. Um,
Okay, if yeah, I agree with you. I think Steelers win this one. Steelers are a good team. Um, I have my hot take for next week if the Vikings win.
okay.
Or I don't know if it makes a difference. Should I just say it now? I want to see how they play against the divisional rival. And then
Sure.
we've already discussed it via text, but I'll put it out there publicly. It has to do with the Steelers, and yes, it has to do with the Vikings. But I'll save it for. I want to see how the Vikings do against a good divisional rival
Yeah.
here. Um. So yeah, Steelers win. Rams at Bears.
Um, I think the Rams win. I think just I don't think the Bears are very good. They're really injured, and I don't think their coach is very good. Um, whereas the Rams are also very injured. They have an incredible quarterback and one of the best coaches in the league.
Yeah, exactly. I to talk about like if we were to talk about coaches and coaches to be exposed like they're just not that good, I think Eberflus is one of them.
Yeah,
Williams is a great QB. He has the potential. There were a lot of Mahomes comps, and that's for a reason. But what people forget about is that Mahomes was not the Mahomes of
Yeah.
3 Super Bowls looking for a three-peat his rookie year. Like,
Yeah.
people passed on him for a reason. And he landed with Reed and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and he's got a humble attitude. He's learned and grown and like leads into the different seasons of their team when he has to be the hero or when he has to work with his receivers to get, yeah. And like Williams, we don't know where Williams is at on that. He's not there right now, and he looks really lost. His scrambles, he has a few plays that are like, oh yeah, I see why there's Mahomes comps, but he
Hmm.
mostly just looks really lost.
Yeah.
And I don't think the coaches are doing. And I'm generally very unimpressed with their defense. Even like people raved about the defense, but yeah, again, I was thinking through this the other day on my run. I forget what I was listening to. It's probably triggered by something I was listening to, but I was like, I'm just unimpressed with the. There's 2 teams. Oh, I think it was the Cowboys defense and the
Yeah.
Bears defense. And then I was like, wait, I'm really impressed. Like, we have an elite defense that we watch with the Vikings. And so I think if you're talking about all NFL teams, yeah, the Bears do have a pretty good defense. They probably squeak into the top 12, top 10 defenses. But I'm not like they don't put fear in me. Like I don't, as
Right.
a Vikings fan, like I'm not nervous about playing them. I think you're right. I think my picks on the year were that they would split against divisional rivals,
Same.
but I think it's very easily that they'll sweep the Bears. All that to say, yes, I agree. I think who, who are they playing?
Rams.
Rams. I think the Rams will beat the
You
Bears.
think opposition wins?
Yeah,
Whoever insert name
whoever's
here
against
wins.
us. I I think so. Like the only thing that holds me back is the Rams are really injured, and there's an extra adrenaline that comes out when you're playing divisional rivals like the 49ers.
Yeah,
And
it's
so I
true.
wonder, will that hold up? Will they carry that energy into the Bears? And the Bears might be able to sneak out another win against them. I don't know. I'm gonna pick the Rams, but it could be close. Um, Eagles at Buccaneers.
This is a really interesting game. Um, oh, man, I think the Eagles are probably the better team, but I think the Buccaneers have something really interesting going on right now, and they're home, so I'm gonna say the Buccaneers.
I'm going with Buccaneers too. I agree. The Eagles are the better team. The Eagles should be beating people first of
Yeah.
all, and then beating them more handily than they are. The reason I picked the Buccaneers is so I've only watched one Eagles game, and it was the Eagles Falcons game, and I was struck by how like that should people talk about the drop pass, people talk about Hurts's interception, people talk about the decision to go for it on the I forget what drive it was, but yeah, that game shouldn't have been close. If they would have gotten pressure on Cousins, it would not have been close. That
Hmm.
like regardless of what the offense did. And again, I got PTSD. Ed Donatel, I realize is not as proven. Fangio is proven. People rave about Fangio and they talk about how he can adjust. But the reason they did well against Saints and David Carr, Derek Carr, whatever his name is,
Yeah.
like,
He has a brother,
he can
David.
he can chuck the ball, but
Yeah.
their main game was running,
Yeah.
and the Buccaneers' main game is passing, and I think they have a really good passing quarterback and wide receivers, and I think the Eagles are really soft against the pass
Yeah.
rush, and so that's why I think the Buccaneers pull off a win against it. Um, Patriots at 49ers.
49ers.
Yeah, 49ers finally get back. They're at home again where it's safe. It's not loud in Minnesota. They're not playing a wizard like Stafford. Commanders at Cardinals.
This is an interesting game. I think Cardinals have had some of the more impressive wins. I forget who else the Commanders beat for their 2 wins,
Do the Cardinals
but
have two?
no, the Commanders have 2. But the
Oh, you said the
Cardinals
Cardinals have
beat.
more impressive.
Um, okay, here, hold on. Cardinals lost last week to the Lions. But I think they put up a fight. Oh, they beat the Rams. They blew out the Rams. In week
The
2.
Cardinals. Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then they played really competitively against the Bills. I think the Cardinals win.
I'm going with Commanders.
All right.
We're just going to be all different this week.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't have a good feeling about this week. It feels really difficult.
Especially after, well, yeah. Again, I'm still, maybe this is bias. Let me rephrase that. There's definitely a healthy dose of bias playing into this, but I don't think the Lions have played that terribly well, and the Cardinals lost to them. Um, I think Commanders can. But yeah, it's like the last 2 weeks have been so bizarre that it's hard to make a
Yeah.
good pick.
Yeah.
How about this one? Chiefs at Chargers. Can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Chargers win.
Chargers? Okay.
Wait, is
Uh,
let me rephrase that. Is Herbert injured? I have not followed his.
I
Is he
haven't
out?
either. Let me look it up here. Or I can do it on my iPad.
So I
Just
can I do this? Is this allowed? If Herbert plays, I think the Chargers win. If Herbert doesn't play, I think the Chiefs win. Or is that too cheap of a?
um
I don't think they've come out yet with who the starter is for the week, but
no, I guess he had an MRI and says shows that he's progressing, according to Jim
oh,
Harbaugh. But Joe Alt, Joey Bosa, and Rayshon Slater did not practice. This was
today.
this was today, yeah.
But that's, I mean, it's not uncommon for people
Yeah.
to not practice on Wednesday, not?
I think that's fairly
I don't know. I
um
mean, it's you should never pick against the Chiefs, but I do think the Chiefs split against division, and
yeah.
they're at the Chargers.
Yeah.
What's your pick?
I'm gonna stick with the Chiefs.
Okay, goody two shoes. Browns at Raiders.
Um Raiders. Raiders.
Yeah, Raiders. Jaguars and Browns are competing for worst team in the league right now.
Surprisingly when we have the Panthers.
Yeah.
um
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so like the Panthers had such a blowout. Like the Browns and well, I guess Jaguars haven't won any. Browns had a win. They didn't blow it out, but Bills at Ravens. This will be a fun game.
yeah, this should be fun. Man. Feels like the Ravens should win. They have feels like a draw, to be honest, as far as teams.
Are
But
they 0-3? Ravens are 0-3.
the Ravens are
No,
one
no,
and
no.
two.
They beat the
Yeah.
Cowboys.
Um, and they're home, so it feels like the Ravens should win. But also the Bills are playing really well right now, so I'm gonna go with the Bills.
I'm gonna go. with the Bills as well. I may have to eat my words against the Bills that I spewed earlier in our because that'll be a legit game. Titans,
Y-
Dolphins, Monday night.
Dolphins are sad, like a really
Yeah.
unfortunate situation. Um, Depending, I mean, yeah, I still think they're better than the Titans. People were high on the Titans. I don't get it.
Who
They
was high?
traded
Rich Eisen was high on them.
Rich
Were
Eisen
other
was,
people?
yeah. If I guess I don't remember for sure what other Titan people. I think mostly were just not talking about him. Rich Eisen was just like, why is everyone in their predictions, all their listeners calling in to predict their teams would always pick a, to win against the Titans, and I just think, yeah, of course, because they're not good. They
Do you
have a
know?
really young quarterback. They traded away one of the best running wide receivers a couple of years ago with AJ Brown, and then um, did they trade or just cut Derrick Henry? But
No, they just
um,
let him go
they
to
just
free
yeah,
agency.
I don't think that the organization is not in a great spot. I think the Dolphins win.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to, do you know who else I noticed? Everybody who'd call in to his show and do the win loss
The
record. Do you
Vikings.
know?
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought about
And he
that too.
never
I
talked
was
about.
what? I'm a big fan of Rich Eisen. I've listened. He's like the one show that I've listened to for years. I don't know what his deal is with the Vikings.
Yeah, same here.
He'll talk
I,
about
I
everyone else, including the Titans. Like,
I enjoy Rich. I have
yeah,
to catch at least parts of the show. Like it's a good
yeah.
show. But yeah, I don't. He doesn't give much airtime to the Vikings. I don't know why.
Mhm.
Um, Seahawks at Lions. That'll be another fun game.
That's a good one. I think. Ooh, Lions are home. Um, but I'm gonna take the Seahawks.
I'm taking the Seahawks as well. Could be wrong. I chose against the Lions last week, and yeah, I'm gonna come back up. You took the Giants over the Cowboys.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take the Cowboys.
there's a good chance I regret that.
You took the Bengals over the Panthers.
Yep.
I'm taking the Panthers.
It's just contrasting.
So either no, I asked for clarification because I couldn't quite remember.
Oh yeah,
I that's the way I was planning to go, and but then I wasn't sure after hearing yours.
yeah.
Um, yeah, either you will be like heads and shoulders above me after this week, or I may be above you.
That's true. Or we'll just draw again.
Yeah, that's true. It could be a draw. It could be. It's so different. Then it could. Okay.
I
Yeah,
imagine
we
there will
will.
be some weird games again. I wouldn't be like Jaguars beat Texans or something.
Yeah, that's one that I thought about. Is like, so if this narrative is true that people who play the Vikings struggle the next week, like watch the Jaguars pull off their first win.
Yeah.
But we'll see. And the Vikings may you chose the Vikings to do the Packers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that would be a fun one to be wrong on, as
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Hey, just a shout out, like I've been consuming a lot of Tom Grossi stuff lately. He's
Uh-huh.
a he's a Packers a big
Yeah.
Packers guy. And that's a
Yeah.
fun, like he'll go through and give his power rankings and stuff, which is fun. Um he's a strong diehard Packers fan.
Yeah.
And then but then he's definitely giving Minnesota their flowers right now
I
more than
should go
some other
watch it.
teams that. So yeah, like that's kind of the gist of like we are unabashedly Vikings fans. but
Yeah.
we enjoy talking about football as a whole. And so
Yeah.
if you're watching this, it's like you enjoy kind of different perspectives, give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, let us know who your favorite team is, or maybe like who we're like totally misreading, and
Who?
we can have some back and
Yeah.
forth on that.
I find it's easier for me. Like I kind of follow the NFL as a whole, but right now I'm also just like really busy, so it's hard to keep up with every game. If there's like a team that I can dive into, and go listen to like some of their podcasts and stuff, that would be kind of interesting because then I could at least bring takes about a team other than the Vikings.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been so like people might wonder when do you have time to like digest all this and stuff. And this year has been kind of I've always enjoyed following football, but
Hmm.
and even baseball, but I've definitely followed more of it and like listened to analysts a lot. I think even more than years past, partly because I've because of some health issues at the beginning of the year, I stepped back from a lot of other tasks like Bible college, and I'm not doing near as much writing and podcasting. So I'm not listening to audiobooks or like other podcasts and
Yeah.
stuff. So when I'm out on runs or if I'm doing a task with work that's something I don't have to
Yeah.
put a lot of thought into or something, I'm often listening to something that has to do with football.
Yeah.
It's kind of a season of life right now, but it's something fun to just kind of dig
Yep.
into, and especially because the Vikings are doing well and surprising people. Like that's a fun place to be.
Yep.
If I was a Titans fan or a Cowboys fan, I probably wouldn't feel so, or a Vikings fan a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
not quite as hot into it. But even
Uh,
last year, like it was fun to see what they did with backup QBs, but it was just like deflating when Kirk Cousins went down with the injury.
yeah. Well, it was particularly deflating because it felt like he was on an MVP run and we were making like a pretty incredible comeback from being down 0-3 or 1
Yeah,
and 3 or whatever it was.
yeah, we went 0-3 and then won. They won one and then lost another.
Yeah. And so it really felt like, oh man, we can make it, we'll have Jefferson back. We can make a run at this thing, and then Cousins went down, and then we had some fun games with Dobbs, and then the rest of the season was just miserable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then some like towards the end of the season, some of the defense got beat up as well, and so it was
Yeah,
kind of it
yeah.
was just like, let's just get this over with.
Yep.
All right, we'll see
All
you
right.
next week. We'll see how
Yeah.
bad or good our guesses have been.
We will see.